Today the Ukrainians finally launched their next wave of massive assaults in the Kherson region. The attack came from the northern group of forces, and many sources suggest that this was one of the most intense Ukrainian attacks. Russian independent media already raised the alarm because, apparently, this is only the first wave and the Ukrainians engaged only a fraction of their forces. Russian government officials are already fleeing Kherson. Such panic in the face of the attack is justified, and here is why. In order to conduct such a massive attack, the Ukrainians have been preparing for around a week. After establishing control over the northern group of settlements, the Ukrainians have been sending a lot of scout groups to find where the Russians are forming their defense line. To complement the on-the-ground efforts, the Ukrainians have also engaged many drones to collect intelligence from the air. Once this preparation stage was completed, the Ukrainians increased the intensity of their attacks by conducting combat reconnaissance. They pushed the Russians along the front line to test their fortifications and find weak spots. In the meantime, Ukrainians have been slowly gathering their machinery and moving it closer to the action. Around 2 days ago, the Ukrainians relocated many tanks and artillery to Petropavlivka and Chervone from the north and to Davydiv Brid from Bereznehuvate. This was the first time when the Russian media sources raised the alarm about the imminent Ukrainian advance. Today at 5 a.m., the Ukrainians started their offensive with extensive artillery preparation. Russian sources reported that Ukrainian artillery has been covering the whole northern front from the area of Petropavlivka, exactly where they were relocated 2 days ago. The Ukrainians have reportedly conducted more than 110 fire missions to undermine Russian defense by damaging their defense infrastructure and supplies of gas, ammunition, and food. The location of these targets has been identified during the preparation stage by conducting reconnaissance in the air and on the ground. The Ukrainians also engaged their aviation and conducted several airstrikes with the aim of destroying Russian air defense in the region. Immediately after the artillery preparation stopped, the Ukrainians opened 2 lines of attack, in the direction of Mylov and Sukhanov. The attacks were launched from Nova Kamyanka because the Russians reportedly destroyed the bridge in Dudcheny. Some sources say that the Russians maintained some presence just to the south of Dudcheny to slow down Ukrainian advances. However, it seems like it did not work because the Ukrainians used at least 30 tanks and many more armored fighting vehicles to push the Russians out of this region. The morning reports indicated that the clashes were taking place between Polonaka and Mylov. Some Ukrainian fighters have already teased the public by saying that there are only 4 settlements away from Bereslav. This claim implies that the Ukrainians have successfully pushed the Russians at least out of Mylov, but there has been no official confirmation yet. If this is true, then the Ukrainians have already cut the main road that was used to supply the Russians here. The Ukrainians have always been moving along the main supply roads from Bereslav. And successful advances here partly explain the rapid Russian collapse. So far, the Ukrainians have not launched their attack from Davydiv Brid, but it is clear that this will be their next major axis of advance. That is why, despite reporting tough fights, Russian sources also caution their military not to get caught in the moment because the Ukrainians are using only a fraction of their reserves and can open more lines of attack at any time. This is in line with what I told you yesterday. A successful advance from Davydiv Brid will serve as a catalyst for the battle for Kherson because it will set the conditions for the attack from Ternopil, and the Ukrainians here have already pulled their reserves closer to the front line. If you are against the invasion of Ukraine and want to support the work that I am doing, consider making a purchase in the online store UA Supporter. Here you can find a lot of products with Ukrainian symbols, to not only show your support for this channel, but also for Ukraine.